Most of the time we treat the brain like a quiet control center, as if there's a little you sitting inside your head steering everything. But the closer scientists look, the more that picture falls apart. The thing you call you can be edited, nudged, and even tricked by this soft, wet organ in ways that keep surprising everyone who studies it. In this video, we'll explore the brain in more depth and learn more about how it really works, far beyond the simple story we were told. If you enjoy this kind of video, please like and subscribe. It helps other people find the video too and get good sleep while learning, and I really appreciate your support. The human brain is small enough to fit in your hands, soft enough to bruise with a careless knock, and yet, inside it, there are more connections than there are stars scattered across the Milky Way. In that folded mass of tissue, signals leap from cell to cell so densely that if you could see them all at once, it would look less like an organ and more like a glowing city seen from orbit. Every thought you've ever had, every moment of anger or joy, every random song lyric you can't forget is stored as living patterns in that fragile, 3-pound universe. When you learn something new, your brain does not simply save, it bends around it. Tiny junctions between cells strengthen or weaken, new roots form, old ones fade. A new skill is a physical change, a rearranging of wiring so that next time the signal can flow more easily. Even remembering is not just opening a drawer. Each time you recall a scene from your past, the brain rebuilds it from scattered pieces, and in the process, edits it a little. The story of your life is being redrawn every time you replay it. Even when you lie still with your eyes closed and sink into deep sleep, the brain does not go quiet. While the conscious part of you drops away, hidden systems start a kind of night shift. Waste chemicals are washed out, overworked circuits are allowed to reset, and memories from the day are replayed and sorted. Out of this silent housekeeping, dreams rise up, stitching together fragments of feeling, memory, and imagination into strange little worlds that vanish by morning. Neuroscience is the attempt to map all of this, to treat that private cosmos as something we can measure and understand. It shows us that the brain is not a fixed control box sitting in the dark, but a restless landscape that reshapes itself with every habit, every surprise, every quiet night of sleep. Inside your skull, there's a piece of living tissue that is, in a way, busier than the night sky. If you look up on a clear night, you see hundreds of billions of stars. That feels like a lot in the biggest possible sense. But in those few pounds of brain you carry around, there are even more tiny connections than there are stars you can see in the galaxy above you. Your brain holds around 86 billion nerve cells. Each one of those cells doesn't just sit alone, like a single star in empty space. It reaches out, branching and branching, making thousands of little contact points with its neighbors. Altogether, those contact points add up to trillions of connections. Some estimates go as high as 100 trillion. It's such a big number that the mind almost refuses to picture it. Each one of those tiny contact points is like a microscopic meeting place where one cell can talk to another. A signal arrives, jumps the gap, and keeps going. That is where your thoughts are shaped. That is where emotions start. That is how memories are passed along from one part of your brain to another, like notes being handed down a long line of people. When you close your eyes and bring up the image of someone you care about, it's not a single special cell lighting up with their face. It's a whole pattern across thousands, even millions of cells firing together. When you listen to music you love, there isn't one music neuron doing the job. There is a whole shimmering pattern rippling through many areas at once. Hearing, memory, emotion, even movement, if your foot starts tapping along. All of that is activity in that inner star field of connections. In that sense, you really are carrying your own galaxy with you. A private universe of tiny flickering signals, changing from moment to moment. More complicated than the Milky Way, and never exactly the same twice. Those cells talk in a very simple language, tiny bursts of electricity and little clouds of chemicals. Every sight, every sound, every thought that drifts through your head runs on this same basic code. Each nerve cell has a long, thin branch that acts like a wire. When the cell wants to send a message, a small electrical pulse runs down that wire. It's like a mini lightning bolt racing along a living cable. At the end of the cable, there's a gap so small you could line thousands of them up, across the thickness of a hair. The electricity can't jump that gap directly. So, right at the edge, the signal changes form. The end of the wire releases tiny packets of chemicals into the gap. Those chemicals drift across the space and lock onto the next cell, like keys slipping into locks. If enough of those keys fit, the next cell fires its own little electrical pulse, and the message continues. Electricity becomes chemistry, then switches back to electricity again, over and over, as the signal moves through the forest of cells. This is happening everywhere, all the time. The faint sound of a bird outside in the morning, the warmth of a mug in your hands, the taste of tea or coffee, the memory of a playground or a friend's laughter from years ago. All of these experiences are built out of countless tiny sparks and chemical puffs racing silently through your brain, in patterns so fast and so reliable that no machine we've built can quite match them. And these messages don't crawl along. They move with surprising speed. When you decide to move your hand, the command doesn't wander lazily from your brain to your fingers. It rushes. The signal starts in a region that plans movement, shoots down long nerve fibers in your spine, then branches out into the nerves that reach your muscles. In some of these pathways, the message can travel at speeds of more than 200 miles an hour, faster than a race car on a track. The trick that makes this possible is a simple bit of design. Many of these long nerve fibers are wrapped in a fatty coating, something like the plastic insulation around an electrical wire. This wrapping stops the signal from leaking out and forces it to jump forward in quick hops. Instead of a slow, steady wave, it becomes a series of rapid skips along the length of the fiber. That turning of a crawl into a leap keeps your reactions sharp. Because of that, you can pull your hand away from something hot almost before you've had time to think. That burns. You can catch a falling glass without planning it out, step by step. You can shape words and sentences in real time, without your tongue waiting for your thoughts to catch up. An instant decision is carried out by signals racing faster than anything you could ever hope to drive. All of that speed and all of those connections come at a price. Your brain is small compared to the rest of your body, only a few pounds of soft tissue, but it is always hungry. Even when you are sitting still, not moving much at all, your brain is burning through about a fifth of all the energy your body uses. Every electrical pulse costs something. After each little spark, tiny pumps in the cell membrane have to reset things, restoring the balance so the cell can fire again. Every cloud of chemical messenger that gets released has to be made, packed, released, and then cleaned up. This constant cycle runs all day, every day, without a break. That is why mental tiredness feels so real. You can sit at a desk all afternoon and hardly move, and yet feel completely drained afterward. Your muscles may have done almost nothing, but your brain has been running hot, paying for thought with sugar and oxygen. It never truly shuts down while you're awake. It keeps planning, noticing, remembering, and predicting, and all of that work burns fuel. Over millions of years, evolution decided that this was a worthwhile trade. A big, hungry brain is expensive to run, but being able to plan ahead, to communicate with complex language, to imagine things that don't exist yet, brought such an advantage that the cost was worth it. In times of starvation, the body will even break itself down to keep the brain going. Other organs can suffer, muscles can shrink, but the brain is kept supplied for as long as possible. Every idea you have ever had, every daydream, every plan for tomorrow has been powered by that constant, demanding fire. And this organ doesn't roll off an assembly line fully finished. For a long time, people thought the brain was mostly done in childhood. You grow up, and the wiring is set, but that simple story turned out to be wrong. Through the teenage years and well into the 20s, the brain is still under heavy construction. The front part, which helps with planning, self-control, and weighing long-term consequences, matures slowly. At the same time, the brain is trimming back its own connections. It keeps the pathways that are used often and lets the rarely used ones fade away. Like a gardener pruning a tree, it cuts some branches so others can grow stronger. This explains a lot about why teenagers can be so bold, so impulsive, and sometimes so reckless. The emotional parts of the brain are already powerful and loud. The systems that say, "Wait, think this through," are still being wired up. It isn't simply stubbornness, it's a real mismatch in timing between different parts of the brain. Far from being a frozen machine, your brain is a living sculpture. It is shaped by your genes, but also by your habits, your environment, your relationships, and your choices. As the years pass and that pruning and strengthening continue, your brain gradually settles into patterns that reflect the life you've lived. By the time that busy remodeling slows down, the wiring in your head carries a unique signature, a trace of the road you've taken, the risks you've faced, the skills you've learned, and the stories you've held onto along the way. When you remember something, your brain doesn't go to a single shelf and pull down a neatly labeled box. There is no little cabinet with a folder called childhood bedroom waiting inside it. Instead, that memory is scattered all over your head, like pieces of a puzzle. The smell of the room is handled in one place, in areas that care about scent. The color of the curtains lives in regions that process sight. The sound of voices or laughter in that room is stored in circuits that handle hearing. The sense of safety or excitement you felt there is tied up in emotional networks. Each part of the memory is kept in a different corner of the brain, in systems that specialize in that kind of information. When you see that bedroom in your mind again, your brain has to pull all of those fragments back online at the same time. It gathers smell, color, sound, and feeling, and stitches them together into one scene that feels whole. What you experience as a single memory is actually many different regions talking to each other in a carefully timed pattern. This way of spreading things out makes memory surprisingly tough. If one part of the brain is damaged, other traces can still hold pieces of the past. You might lose some details but keep others, because they were stored elsewhere. At the same time, this is exactly why memories can be fuzzy or warped. You are not pressing play on a perfect recording. You are rebuilding a mosaic from many little tiles. And sometimes a few tiles are missing or replaced. Each time you recall a moment, the memory has to be taken down off the shelf and made active again. And when it's active, it becomes soft, a little flexible. Your current mood can bleed into it. New information can blend with the old. Something someone says about that day can quietly slide into the story. Then the brain saves it again in this slightly updated form. Over years, this process adds up. The version of a childhood event you hold now may not match exactly what happened at the time. It isn't that you're trying to deceive yourself. It's just that the memory has been reopened and rewritten many times. Two people who were both there might give very different descriptions of the same moment. Both of them feel honest because memory is alive, not frozen. So your past is not a dusty archive sitting untouched in the dark. It's more like a book that keeps being edited by the present. Every recall is a small revision. Each memory is part history and part imagination, woven together so tightly that you can't easily see the seams. The same living quality shows up in how your brain learns. Taking in something new isn't just adding information. It means physically changing the wiring inside your head. Every fresh skill, every repeated practice sparks tiny changes at the junctions between cells. Some connections grow stronger, like footpaths turning into well-trodden roads. New connections sprout where there were none before. Others, rarely used, are quietly trimmed away. A beginner at the piano, stumbling over simple scales, is literally carving out new roots. With practice, those routes become smooth highways, and the fingers seem to know what to do before the player even thinks about it. When you start learning a new language, you're not just memorizing words, you're building fresh circuits between areas that handle sound, meaning, and memory. At first it feels slow and clumsy. Over time, those paths grow faster, and understanding begins to snap into place. Even something as ordinary as finding a new shortcut home teaches your brain a new pattern, a small update to its internal map. This built-in ability to adapt has a name: neuroplasticity. It simply means the brain can change its own structure in response to experience. And it does this not just in childhood, but throughout your entire life. Because of neuroplasticity, a person who has had a stroke can sometimes relearn how to move or speak. Areas that were not originally in charge of a certain task can take over part of the job. With therapy and practice, new pathways are trained to carry signals around damaged zones. It's also why staying mentally active, learning new things, and challenging yourself can help keep the mind more flexible with age. Your brain is never truly finished. It is not a static machine you are stuck with. It is more like a sculpture that is constantly being reshaped, or a city whose roads are always being built, repaired, or rerouted. Every book you read, every skill you practice, every habit you repeat, leaves its mark in that living structure, rewiring it in countless small ways day after day. All day long, your brain is busy. Neurons fire, chemicals are released, signals race back and forth. That constant work leaves behind tiny bits of waste, like ash from a fire. While you are awake, this waste slowly builds up in the spaces between cells. If it stayed there, your thinking would get slower and muddier. Deep sleep is when the cleanup crew arrives. Wrapped around the brain is a special system of channels that can flush clear fluid through its tissue. During the night, this fluid begins to flow more strongly. It washes through the spaces between neurons, picking up waste products and carrying them away. Some of what it removes are proteins that, when allowed to build up over many years, are linked to diseases like Alzheimer's. You can think of it like a quiet river running through a crowded city after midnight. While the streets are empty, the water can move freely, carrying away the trash that piled up during the busy day. If you cut that process short, the debris hangs around. That's one reason a bad night of sleep can leave you feeling foggy, forgetful, or off. Your brain didn't get enough time to rinse itself. So sleep is not just nothing happening. It's a very active repair shift. Circuits calm down so they can reset. Chemicals are brought back into balance. Waste is cleared out so that the same cells can wake up in the morning and work cleanly again. When you sleep, you are giving your brain a chance to quietly scrub itself and prepare for another day of thinking. And while this cleaning is going on, another strange thing is happening. The brain starts making stories. Dreams are one of the oddest things we experience. You lie still, eyes closed, cut off from the outside world, and yet inside your head, whole scenes appear. One idea is that dreams are practice runs. In them, you might be chased, lost, late, or facing something strange. Your brain may be using sleep to rehearse how to deal with danger, confusion, or surprise, trying out different reactions in a safe space where nothing can actually hurt you. Another idea is that dreams help with sorting memories. Events from the day are replayed and mixed with older scenes. Today's worries might be placed next to something from years ago. Faces, places, and feelings get woven into a bigger story about who you are and what matters to you. In this view, dreaming helps file new experiences into the ongoing library of your life. There is also the thought that dreams help with creativity. During sleep, normal rules about what makes sense loosen. Areas of the brain that don't usually talk much may suddenly connect. Ideas that rarely meet when you're awake can bump into each other. That's why dreams can be so bizarre, but also why they sometimes hand you a new way of seeing something, or a solution that wasn't obvious before, no matter which explanation turns out to be most accurate. One thing is clear: The brain does not stop imagining just because you are asleep. Even in deep quiet, it is busy building worlds, replaying scenes, and running little experiments inside your mind. Dreams are a sign that the engine of imagination keeps turning in the dark. The body rests, but the brain continues to hum, its inner fire still glowing softly behind closed eyes. When most people picture a brain cell, they imagine the classic star shape with little sparks flying off it. That's a neuron. It gets all the fame. But neurons are only part of the cast. For every single neuron, there are several other cells quietly working in the background. These are glial cells, and they actually outnumber neurons by a wide margin. For a long time, glial cells were treated as nothing special. Scientists thought they were just padding, like packing foam for the real cells that do the thinking. Like packing foam for the real cells that do the thinking. Now we know that idea was far too simple. Some glial cells wrap themselves around neurons and make that fatty coating that speeds up electrical signals. Others act like guides, helping newborn neurons find the right place to settle. Some behave like tiny cleaners, moving through the brain to clear away dead cells and bits of debris before they cause trouble. There are glial cells shaped like stars called astrocytes. They sit close to busy regions of the brain and control how much blood flows there. When an area of tissue starts working hard, astrocytes help open up blood vessels so more oxygen and sugar can rush in. In this way, they quietly make sure active neurons get the fuel they need. It is easy to think of glial cells as the crew behind the scenes. If neurons are the performers that light up with activity, glia are the stage managers, technicians, and support staff. They run lights, sound, and supplies so the show of consciousness can keep going. Day and night. Neurons themselves come in many shapes and sizes. Some are tiny with branches that only reach their closest neighbors. Others are long enough to stretch almost the full length of your body. A few of the longest begin high in the spinal cord and extend all the way down a leg to a foot. That means one single cell can span more than a meter from end to end. These huge neurons act like living wires. They carry commands from your brain to your muscles, telling them when to contract. They bring signals from your skin and joints back up toward the spine, letting your brain know where your body is in space. Many of them are wrapped in that insulating layer of fat, so electrical impulses don't leak away. The signal jumps quickly along the length, racing from one end of the cell to the other in tiny fractions of a second. If you picture one of these cells, it is like seeing a thin thread made of life itself, running from your back to your toes, carrying little sparks up and down. It's a reminder that the brain is not just inside the skull. Its cells reach out through the nerves, turning your whole body into part of the same network that links mind to movement. Deep inside that network is a small curved piece of tissue with a strange shape. It is called the hippocampus, a name that comes from the Greek word for seahorse. If you could see it from the side, you would notice it bends and curls, much like the body of that little animal. It does not look impressive in size, but it does something crucial. The hippocampus is one of the main gates to your memory. When you live through a new event, signals pass through the hippocampus as they are being stored. If this structure is badly damaged or removed on both sides, something striking happens. Old memories from years ago can remain, but new daily events do not stick. You can have a conversation, and then minutes later it slips away as if it never happened. That is what doctors saw in a famous patient known as HM, whose hippocampi were removed to treat severe seizures. His past stayed, but his present kept vanishing. The hippocampus also helps you know where you are. It works like an inner map maker, helping you remember the layout of rooms, streets, and cities. When you recognize a familiar route or find your way through your home in the dark, signals from this seahorse-shaped region are part of the process. Every memory of a building, a path, or a favorite corner of a room passes through it on its way into longer-term storage. Quietly, in the depths of your brain, this little curved strip of tissue helps anchor you in both time and space. All of this activity, from glial support to long neuron signals, to memory mapping, rides on waves of electrical rhythm. Even when you sit still and close your eyes, your brain is not silent. Electrical patterns sweep across it in repeating pulses called brain waves. These waves change their speed and shape depending on what you are doing. When you are fully awake and focused, your brain shows fast, small ripples. When you start to relax, close your eyes, and drift, those waves slow down and become smoother. As you fall into deep, heavy sleep, they slow further still into large, rolling swells that move across the cortex. This is one of the most restorative states for your body and mind. Later in the night, when vivid dreams arrive, the patterns suddenly become quicker and more jagged again, almost like the awake state returning inside your sleeping head. These rhythms are not just background noise. They help different parts of the brain stay in sync. Waves can line up the timing of distant regions so that signals arrive when they are most useful. In that way, brain waves act like a shared beat that keeps many players in time with each other. As you move from alertness to relaxation, into deep sleep, and then into dreams, the tempo of those waves keeps shifting. Within that quiet shifting of pulses is a kind of hidden music. It is not sound you can hear, but a changing pattern you live inside all the time. Each state you pass through, focused work, calm rest, deep sleep, wild dreaming, has its own rhythm. Together they form the background score to your thoughts, your memories, and your sense of being awake in the world. Inside your brain, connections are never completely fixed. The tiny gaps where one neuron talks to another, the synapses, can change their strength in minutes. When two cells tend to fire together again and again, the link between them gets easier to use. The signal crosses more readily, as if the path between them has been cleared and smoothed. When a connection is rarely used, it slowly weakens, like a trail in the woods being reclaimed by plants. This is happening all the time. While you practice a new skill, some synapses are being reinforced over and over. They become quick, efficient routes. When you stop using a skill, those same routes begin to fade. Not all at once, but step by step. The brain decides, we don't need this as much, and frees that wiring for other things. This constant adjustment is the physical basis of memory, habit, and learning. Every choice to repeat something, or to ignore something, leaves a tiny mark in the structure of your brain. So, the brain is not a rigid machine with fixed cables. It is more like a living web, where threads strengthen or loosen from moment to moment. Each thought you return to, each habit you feed, slightly rewrites that web, leaving a trace of where your attention has been. You can feel this most sharply with pain. When you stub your toe, it feels like the pain lives in the toe itself. But what actually happens is that sensors in the skin send signals up nerves to your spinal cord and into your brain. Those signals are only alarm messages. The actual feeling of pain, the sharpness, the burning, the ouch of it, is created in the brain. That's why some people who lose a limb can still feel it. They may feel itching in a hand that is no longer there, or cramps in a missing foot. The original signals from that part of the body are gone, but the brain's map of the body is still intact, and those circuits can still produce sensation. Pain is not a simple readout of damage. It is a protective story the brain constructs to keep you safe. Sometimes that story is accurate. Sometimes it overreacts. Pain can stay long after an injury heals, because the brain has learned to expect danger and keeps firing those warning signals. The suffering is real, but the source is inside the nervous system, not necessarily in the tissue. Pain is as much an experience of the mind as it is of the body, showing how tightly the two are tied together. The same mind-body link shows up in an unexpected place, the placebo effect. If someone takes a pill they believe will help, even if it has no active drug inside, their brain can still respond as if real treatment has begun. The simple expectation of relief can set off its own chain reaction. Inside the brain, natural painkillers called endorphins can be released, Circuits that use dopamine, a chemical linked to motivation and reward, can become more active, lifting mood and energy. In some cases, even the immune system seems to react to this shift in belief. The body is not faking it. It is responding to signals coming from the brain's sense of hope and trust. This is why new medicines have to be tested against placebos. The brain's own pharmacy is powerful enough to change symptoms, and any real effect has to be stronger than that built-in response. Placebos do not cure everything, of course, but they show that expectation and belief are not just feelings. They can write themselves into the chemistry of the brain and body. Another thing that stirs the whole brain at once is music. When you listen to a song you love, many different systems wake up together. Rhythm speaks to motor areas and makes you want to move, even if it's just a finger tapping. The tune itself runs through hearing circuits that decode pitch and tone. If there are words, language areas light up to follow the lyrics. At the same time, emotional centers react, turning a simple pattern of sounds into sadness, joy, or tension. Memory regions join in, linking the song to moments from your past, bringing back places, faces, and feelings you thought you had forgotten. The more you listen, the more the front of the brain gets involved, too, predicting the next note, noticing harmonies, and paying attention to surprise. In that sense, music is almost a full brain workout. A favorite song can reach into nearly every corner of your mind and turn small electrical signals into something that feels deep and meaningful. Laughter does something similar, but with chemistry. A real, uncontrolled laugh is one of the simplest pleasures the brain can trigger. Yet, under the surface, a lot is happening. When you laugh, your brain releases endorphins, the same natural chemicals that dull pain. This can leave you feeling loose and warm, even if nothing in your body has changed. Other chemicals join in. Dopamine rises in reward circuits, creating a sense of pleasure. Serotonin, which helps stabilize mood, can increase, smoothing away some of the rough edges of stress. Meanwhile, cortisol, one of the main stress hormones, tends to drop. The result is that laughter feels physically cleansing, like pressure being released from inside. Laughter is also infectious. When you hear someone else laugh, parts of your brain that mirror other people's actions begin to echo that sound. They nudge your own muscles and emotions toward joining in, even if you don't know exactly what was funny. Over time, groups that share laughter often become more trusting and resilient. A laugh is not just noise. It is a small burst of biology that heals, connects, and calms. Underneath many of these experiences is the brain's reward system, a set of circuits deep inside that respond to things that matter for survival. When you eat something satisfying, when you explore somewhere new, when you solve a problem or share a bond with someone, these pathways release dopamine. It feels good, but the purpose is not simple pleasure. It is training. The reward system takes note of what led to that good feeling and quietly tags it as worth doing again. Over time, it teaches you which behaviors to repeat and which to avoid. For our ancestors, this system encouraged finding food, forming close relationships, and staying curious about their surroundings. In the modern world, the same system can get pulled toward things that aren't so healthy, like addictive substances or compulsive habits that flood it artificially. Still, at its core, the reward system is a compass. Each little burst of happiness is like a marker placed on your internal map, saying this mattered. It shapes habits, ambitions, and cravings, pushing you through the world toward your brain has learned to value. Part of how you relate to other people is handled by mirror systems in the brain. These were first noticed in monkeys, when scientists saw certain cells fire both when an animal performed an action and when it watched another animal do the same thing. In humans, similar patterns appear. When you see someone smile, parts of your own motor and emotional circuits echo that expression. They gently nudge your mood upward. When you see someone get hurt, areas that respond to pain can activate in you as well, making you wince even though nothing touched you. The brain is simulating what the other person feels, creating a faint copy inside your own nervous system. This mirroring helps with empathy, with learning by watching, and with culture itself. It lets you absorb skills without doing them first. It helps you share emotional states just by being near others. In this way, the boundary between you and them is not as sharp as it looks. Hidden threads of shared activity run between brains, tying your inner world to the people around you. All the while, your brain is not simply reacting to what has already happened. It is constantly predicting what will happen next. When you reach out for a cup, your brain has already guessed how heavy it will be, how it will feel, and what muscles you need to use. When you walk through a familiar room, your mind is predicting what your eyes should see with each step. Even your basic perception is shaped by these predictions. The brain fills in missing details, smooths over gaps, and sometimes even sees what expects more than what is actually there. This is why visual illusions can fool you. The brain's guesses, which usually keep you moving smoothly through the world, sometimes override raw signals and lead you astray. But most of the time, this constant forecasting saves time and energy, letting you move and react faster than conscious thought alone would allow. There is one more surprising layer. When you feel as though you have just made a decision, pressed a button, lifted a hand, it seems like your conscious mind gave the command and your body obeyed. Yet experiments suggest that the brain often begins preparing an action a fraction of a second before you become aware of choosing it. Researchers have measured a small buildup of electrical activity, a readiness signal, in motor areas of the brain. This signal appears before people say they have decided to move. In some studies, patterns in brain activity can even hint at a choice seconds before it reaches awareness. What this means for free will is still debated, but it suggests that consciousness may not be the very first spark. Instead, the brain may start an action, and then your awareness steps in and claims it as my decision. In that view, consciousness is the storyteller that arrives just after the main event. Your brain prepares, your body moves. Then your mind weaves the action into your personal story of who you are and what you intended. Just behind your forehead sits a strip of brain tissue that acts a bit like the boss of the mind. This is the prefrontal cortex. It is the part that thinks ahead, weighs options, and tries to keep you from doing the first thing that pops into your head. When you plan your week, resist the urge to eat a whole box of sweets, or decide to save money for later, instead of spending it now, this region is working hard. When the prefrontal cortex is damaged or underactive, things feel different. People can become more impulsive, more reckless, more driven by the emotion of the moment. The famous case of Phineas Gage showed this starkly. After an accident destroyed much of this area in his brain, his personality changed. His basic intelligence remained, but his judgment and self-control were not the same. Without a well-functioning prefrontal cortex, feelings and instincts have far less supervision. With it, humans can hold long-term goals in mind, build plans that stretch years into the future, and keep short-term urges from steering the entire ship. Day to day, though, most of your life is not run by that executive alone. A lot of what you do happens on autopilot. You tie your shoes, lock the door, check your phone, drive familiar routes, and often you barely think about each step. This autopilot lives largely in deep structures called the basal ganglia. When you first learn a new habit, the prefrontal cortex is heavily involved. It pays attention, walks you through each move, corrects mistakes. But as you repeat the behavior, something shifts, control slips downward, into those deeper loops. The action becomes smoother and more automatic. This is useful. It frees up your conscious mind to focus on other things. The downside is that once a habit is carved into those circuits, it is hard to break. A certain place, time, or feeling can trigger the loop. The routine unfolds almost by itself, and a small sense of reward at the end seals it in further. To change a habit, you are not just wrestling with willpower. You are trying to carve a new groove in the brain, one that must be repeated enough times to become the new automatic path. Deeper still, there are structures shaped like small almonds, buried in the temporal lobes. These are the amygdalae. They are ancient parts of the brain that are especially tuned to threat. When something seems dangerous, the amygdala can hijack your system in an instant. You might jump at a sudden sound or feel a jolt of fear before you have time to think about what it was. This fast route sends signals to other centers that control hormones, heart rate, and breathing. Your pulse speeds up, your senses sharpen, your body prepares to fight, flee, or freeze. It is a survival shortcut designed to act first and ask questions later. In the wild, that kind of rapid response can save your life. In modern life, the same system can misfire, reacting to harmless things as if they were serious threats. A raised voice, an email, a crowded room can set off a wave of anxiety or anger. The amygdala protects you, but it can also disturb your peace when it is too sensitive. Long-lasting stress presses on all of these systems at once. A short burst of stress, like a tight deadline or a sudden scare, can sharpen your focus and help you react quickly. But when stress becomes a constant background, the chemistry of the brain begins to change. Hormones such as cortisol stay elevated for too long. Over time, this can shrink connections in the hippocampus, the region that helps with memory and learning. At the same time, circuits in the amygdala can grow stronger, making fear and alertness more easily triggered. The prefrontal cortex can also be weakened by chronic stress. Its ability to plan, focus, and regulate emotion is dulled. Decisions feel harder. Patience wears thin. The overall balance of the brain tilts toward vigilance and away from calm reasoning. This helps explain why long-term stress is linked with anxiety, depression, and problems with memory. The picture is not all bleak, though. The brain can push back. Practices like mindfulness and meditation, regular exercise and real rest all help to restore balance. When you sit quietly and bring your attention back to the present, again and again, you are not just calming yourself in the moment. You are also training networks that support focus and emotional stability. With time, connections in the prefrontal cortex can grow stronger, and activity in an overactive amygdala can decrease. The brain begins to shift back toward a steadier state. Modern scans have shown that people who meditate regularly often have thicker or more connected areas in parts of the cortex involved in attention and self-awareness. Even beginners can show changes after a few weeks of steady practice. What looks from the outside like just sitting there breathing is, inside the skull, a kind of workout. Each time you notice your mind has wandered and gently bring it back, it is like lifting a small weight with the muscles of attention. Over many repetitions, those mental muscles develop. Experience can leave marks even deeper than that. It does not just shape memories and habits, it can also leave traces on how genes are used. The DNA you inherit is like a long set of instructions, but those instructions can be tagged with tiny chemical markers that change how strongly they are read. Severe stress or trauma can alter some of these tags. That does not rewrite the genes themselves, but it can shift how active certain stress-related systems are. Studies in animals show that stress in one generation can make the next generation more reactive, more cautious, even if the young have not experienced the same hardships. In humans, children and grandchildren of people who lived through extreme trauma, such as war or famine, sometimes show different patterns of stress hormones compared to those without that history. It is as if some echo of the past is carried forward in biology, priming bodies to be more vigilant. This field, called epigenetics, is still growing, but it suggests that experience can ripple across time, carried not just in family stories but in the way genes are turned up or down. All of these changes, from habits to stress, from meditation to trauma, rest on one central feature: the brain's plasticity. For a long time, scientists believed that after childhood, the adult brain was mostly fixed. Cells were set, circuits were sealed, and change was limited. That view has been overturned. The brain remains adaptable throughout life. New neurons continue to appear in some regions. Synapses can strengthen, weaken, and reorganize. After injury or stroke, other areas can sometimes take over roles that have been lost, allowing people to regain movement or speech with training. When musicians practice for years, regions linked to movement, touch, and hearing can grow larger or more finely wired. Taxi drivers who navigate complex city streets often show changes in the hippocampus, reflecting their rich mental maps. These examples are all signs of the same principle. The brain is not a rigid machine. It is a living organ that shapes itself according to what you do, what you feel, and what you repeat. Growth does not end when childhood does. Every new experience, every challenge, every quiet effort to focus or to rest leaves a small physical mark somewhere in that 3-pound landscape. Over time, those marks become the map of your mind. At the back of your head, tucked neatly under the bigger domes of the brain, sits a smaller folded lump called the cerebellum, the little brain. It doesn't look like much compared to the giant hemispheres above it, but it hides an enormous secret. Most of your neurons live there. Packed into its tight grooves are tens of billions of cells, more than in all the rest of your brain combined. The cerebellum is famous for what you notice most when it goes wrong: movement. It smooths every step you take, adjusts your balance when you trip, and keeps your hands steady when you reach for a glass. Without it, walking becomes awkward, speech can turn slurred, and simple actions feel jerky and uncertain. But it doesn't stop at movement. The same dense wiring that polishes your motions also seems to fine-tune your thoughts and feelings, quietly helping to keep timing, rhythm, and flow in your mental life as well. Like an internal metronome, the cerebellum keeps your actions and perceptions in sync, turning clumsy impulses into something closer to grace. Across the rest of the brain, activity doesn't fire randomly either. Neurons tend to fire in waves, falling into rhythmic patterns, like the beat of a song. Some of these rhythms are slow and heavy, like the deep waves that roll through your brain during deep sleep. Others are fast and sharp, appearing when you are alert, focused, or piecing together complex sights and sounds. These brainwaves help far-flung regions keep time with one another, like musicians in an orchestra, following the same tempo. When the timing falls apart, such as in certain kinds of seizures, activity can turn into a storm, and thoughts, movement, or awareness can briefly lose their usual coherence. Just by watching these rhythms, researchers can often tell whether someone is awake, drifting, dreaming, or concentrating. In that sense, your brain is always playing its own silent music, keeping thought and action aligned in time. Sometimes, though, the inner show breaks loose from the outside world. In hallucinations, people see things, hear voices, or feel sensations that have no matching input from the senses. To the brain, they are real. The same circuits that process genuine sights and sounds are active. What hallucinations reveal is something that is true all the time. The world you experience is built, not merely received. Under normal conditions, incoming sensory data and the brain's expectations match up, and you get a smooth, stable reality. But when chemistry shifts, or illness, drugs, or isolation disrupt that balance, the brain's own predictions can overpower the raw data and generate experiences from within. You don't have to be ill to glimpse this. Think of hearing your phone buzz when it didn't, or catching a glimpse of a face in the pattern of a curtain or a cloud. The brain is always searching for meaning, often seeing more structure than is really there. Hallucinations are just the most intense version of a basic habit. Your mind is constantly constructing reality, stitching together scraps of sensation and expectation into a coherent world. Optical illusions pull back the curtain on how this construction works. You see lines that look bent but are straight, shapes that seem to move on a still page, or two colors that appear different even though they're the same shade. These tricks don't happen in your eyes. They happen in the brain to make sense of a messy, ambiguous world at high speed. The brain uses shortcuts. It guesses depth from shadows, fills in missing edges, and predicts motion before it actually occurs. Most of the time, these shortcuts let you move safely and quickly, turning incomplete information into useful perception. Illusions expose the times when the shortcuts misfire, and you get to watch the brain's best guess instead of the raw picture. Color is one of the clearest examples of this. Outside your mind, there are no red apples or blue skies. There are only surfaces reflecting light in different wavelengths. Your eyes pick up those wavelengths with specialized cells, and then the brain interprets that pattern of signals as color. And the brain interprets that pattern of signals as color. The experience of blue or green lives entirely in your nervous system. Different species carve the spectrum up in different ways. Bees see patterns in ultraviolet light that humans can't detect. Birds can see colors beyond our range. Even among people, small differences in the eye and brain can shift how each of us experiences the same shade. In a sense, the world is colorless until your brain paints it. The same is true of your sense of me. The feeling of being a single, continuous self doesn't come from one special spot, like a little person sitting at a control desk. It comes from many regions working together. Some areas track the internal state of your body, your heartbeat, your breath, the position of your limbs. Others handle thoughts about yourself, your name, your preferences, your personal story. Still, others help draw a line between where you end and the outside world begins. When these regions are damaged or disrupted, strange things can happen. People may feel detached from their body, or as if their actions are being controlled from outside. They may lose a stable sense of identity altogether. This shows how delicate that feeling of I really is. What seems like a solid core is actually a constantly updated conversation among circuits, so smooth most of the time that you don't notice it is happening. When your mind drifts and you're not focused on any task, staring out a window, walking without thinking about the route, another set of regions tends to light up. This is called the default mode network. It links areas involved in self-reflection, memory, and imagining the future. While you daydream, this network is busy replaying old scenes, projecting possible futures, and weaving them into an inner story about who you are. It is the brain's idle mode, but it isn't idle at all. It is maintaining your internal narrative, even when nothing much is happening on the outside. Disturbances in this network have been tied to conditions like depression and Alzheimer's, where that story becomes painful or begins to fray. Far from being wasted time, daydreaming may be one of the main ways your brain keeps your sense of self stitched together. Creativity seems to spark when several big networks like this bump into each other in just the right way. The default mode network can throw up unexpected ideas, a phrase, an image, a half-formed solution. The brain's control systems, including the prefrontal cortex, step in to test those ideas, shape them, and decide which ones are worth keeping. Another network, tuned to what is important and what is not, helps switch attention between wandering thoughts and focused work. When these systems are loosely but richly connected, ideas can jump across boundaries that normally keep them apart. In those moments, a melody might appear out of nowhere, a problem might suddenly feel solvable, or a new design might assemble itself in your mind. Even quiet rest can help this happen. Because when you are not locked onto a task, thoughts can roam more freely, and odd combinations can arise. A painting, a poem, a clever solution, or a new invention isn't the product of a single creative center. It is the whole brain working together, weaving bits and pieces from many places into something that did not exist before. Every moment, your senses send in more information than your brain can possibly use. Sounds, sights, smells, the feel of your clothes on your skin, the position of your limbs, the faint hum of appliances, tiny shifts in light. If all of it reached full awareness, you would be overwhelmed in seconds. So your brain filters, constantly, ruthlessly. Some of that filtering happens before signals even get far. Sensory cells adapt and stop shouting about things that don't change. The thalamus, a relay hub deep in the brain, decides what gets passed on and what gets softened. The cortex itself turns the volume up on some inputs and fades others into the background. Most of the noise around you is quietly dimmed until it barely exists in your awareness. You hear the conversation in front of you, but not the air conditioner. You feel the book in your hands, but not your socks. This filter isn't fixed. It bends around what matters most. A parent can sleep through loud traffic, but wake instantly at a baby's small cry. A trained soldier can pick out a faint, unusual sound in a sea of background noise. The brain behaves like a spotlight operator, choosing what to light up and what to leave in the dark. What you experience as the world is not the full flood of reality. It is a carefully chosen stream, selected to help you survive and make sense of things. Inside that stream, attention is the tightest focus. It feels like you can take in everything at once, but attention doesn't work that way. It is more like a beam that can light up only one patch of the mental stage at a time. When you point it at a page, the words grow clear and rich with meaning, while the room around you fades. When you lock onto a voice in a noisy crowd, the other conversations blur into soft background. This sharp focus lets you see detail and follow complex tasks. The price is that things outside the beam can vanish, even when they are right in front of you. Classic experiments show that when people are told to count something on a screen, many will fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. The brain simply didn't allocate attention there. The spotlight can move quickly, but it can't be everywhere at once. Reality is always larger than what you notice, with most of it sliding past the edges of awareness. Even when you fall asleep and attention seems to disappear, your brain does not truly switch off. Sleep feels like dropping into nothing, but deep inside your skull, networks are still humming. In the deepest stages of non-dreaming sleep, slow waves roll across the cortex, big, synchronized pulses of electrical activity. The brainstem keeps breathing and heart rate steady. Hearing areas continue to listen faintly, ready to flag any sound that might mean danger. That slight vigilance is why a sudden noise, a door slam, a breaking glass, can yank you awake so fast. Certain patterns are allowed to break through the barrier of sleep. Others are ignored. Sleep is less like turning the brain off and more like changing its mode. Different states carry out different tasks: repair, cleaning, memory sorting, emotional reset. While you drift, the machinery keeps watch. Later in the night, during REM sleep, things become stranger. Your closed eyes flicker. Inside, brain activity begins to look a lot like wakefulness. Visual areas light up. Emotional circuits become vivid. The system that calms muscles switches on strongly, leaving your body mostly paralyzed so you don't act out what you are doing in your dreams. In that state, the brain generates full experiences without any help from the outside world. It builds scenes, characters, and events, almost like running its own private cinema. You may fly, fall, argue, explore impossible cities, talk with people who are gone, or relive places that never existed. The stories can be joyful, bizarre, or terrifying. While they play out, they feel real. Your heart can race. You can feel grief or relief, all while you lie still. Dreams show the brain's creative engine working at full power, conjuring worlds from nothing but its own stored pieces. Take sleep away, and that carefully balanced system starts to fray. One short night makes attention dull and reaction times slower. Stretch the lack of sleep over several days, and the effects grow deeper. Concentration collapses. Mood can swing wildly. Thoughts become scattered. In extreme cases, people begin to see or hear things that aren't there. The brain starts to look in its patterns and behavior, a bit like it does in mental illnesses such as severe depression, anxiety disorders, or psychosis. The reason is chemistry and control. Without enough sleep, neurotransmitters drift out of balance. The prefrontal cortex, which helps with planning, judgment, and emotional control, loses some of its grip. The amygdala, which reacts to threat, becomes more easily triggered. Emotions run hotter, memory suffers. Perception grows unstable. Sleep deprivation is not just feeling tired, it is a temporary loosening of the mind's structure, A reminder of how carefully tuned your waking brain has to be to feel normal. Within sleep, there are unusual corners of consciousness too. Sometimes while dreaming, you suddenly realize that you are in a dream. The scene continues, but awareness blooms. This is lucid dreaming. In that state, some people can steer the story. They may choose to fly, change the scenery, or face something that usually frightens them. Brain scans suggest that parts of the prefrontal cortex, usually quieter in normal dreams, become more active during lucidity. Self-awareness and the dream world blend. Some people try to train this skill with small habits while awake, like checking whether they are dreaming, so that the habit carries over into sleep. When it works, it feels like waking up inside your own imagination, walking through landscapes built by your mind. Lucid dreams are usually brief, but they hint at how flexible awareness is. Even in sleep, the line between inside and outside, between control and surrender, can bend. Not all dreams are pleasant, of course. Nightmares can jolt you awake with racing heart and lingering fear, yet they may have a purpose. Many nightmares involve being chased, falling, losing control, or facing danger. One idea is that the brain is rehearsing how to respond to threats. In a dream, you can face fear without real harm. The emotional systems can practice, learn, and adjust. Nightmares might also help process heavy experiences, giving the mind a place to work through stress or trauma in a symbolic way. Children tend to have more nightmares than adults, perhaps because their brains are still building strategies for handling a confusing world. While nightmares feel awful in the moment, they might leave the waking brain better prepared, like mental training sessions against imagined danger. All of this, the rise and fall of sleep, the timing of dreams, the daily rhythm of alertness, is guided by a tiny clock inside your brain. Deep in the hypothalamus is a small cluster of neurons that keeps time on a roughly 24-hour cycle. It helps set when you feel sleepy or awake, when hormones rise and fall, when hunger peaks, and when body temperature shifts. Light from the eyes resets this clock each morning. Bright light tells the brain to hold back on melatonin, the hormone that makes you feel drowsy. Darkness allows melatonin to flow, easing you towards sleep. This inner clock is ancient. Variations of it exist in many animals and even plants, all tuned to the turning of the earth. When the clock falls out of sync with local time, you feel it. That is jet lag. Your master clock says morning, while your body, which has its own smaller clocks in organs and tissues, still feels like it is in the night of your old time zone. The mismatch leaves you tired, moody, and off balance until light and routine slowly bring everything back in line. While the clock keeps time, sleep also does quiet work on memory. New things you learn during the day are fragile at first. The brain holds them in a temporary, easily disrupted form. During certain stages of sleep, especially deep, slow-wave sleep, neurons in the hippocampus fire in patterns that echo what you experienced. It is like a replay. This appears to help move those memories into more stable storage spread across the cortex. Because of this, sleep is vital for learning. Without enough of it, new information can fade or stay scattered. With good sleep, what you studied or practiced has a better chance of being woven firmly into your memory networks. That is why reviewing material, playing a piece of music, or going over new words just before bed often helps recall the next day. Those fresh traces are still clear, and then quickly passed into the night's replay queue. Naps tap into the same machinery, just in shorter bursts. A brief nap of around 20 minutes can sharpen alertness and lift mood, even though it may not reach the deepest stages of sleep. Longer naps that drop into slow wave and REM sleep can boost memory, insight, and problem solving. During a nap, the brain can begin cleaning up waste, rebalancing chemicals, and stabilizing small fragments of memory that built up during the morning. Waking from a good nap can feel like returning with a slightly newer mind, less cluttered, more focused. In cultures that make room for daytime rest, people often show better sustained alertness and productivity. Far from being laziness, napping fits the brain's natural rhythm. It is a small reset, a quick press of the refresh button that clears the mental screen so thought can appear again with a little more clarity. Your brain makes its own strange chemicals. One of them is DMT, a powerful psychedelic most people only hear about in the context of drugs, but in tiny amounts, your own body produces it. It shows up in the brain, the pineal gland, and other tissues. In doses so small, we still don't fully understand what it does. Some scientists suspect it might play a quiet role in mood, perception, or the vivid pictures of dreaming. Others wonder if, during extreme states like near-death, sudden floods of natural chemicals might help explain the intense visions people report. No one has the full answer yet. What we do know is that the line between normal brain chemistry and altered states is thinner than it seems. The brain already carries ingredients capable of changing reality from the inside. Psychedelic substances like psilocybin and LSD push that to the foreground. People who take them often describe the feeling that the usual I dissolves, the sense of being a solid, separate self loosens. Brain scans show that these drugs tend to quiet the default mode network, the system that keeps your inner story running, the region that says, "This is me, this is my life." When that network calms down, boundaries can blur. Some people feel fused with nature, with other people, or with something vast and hard to name. Alongside confusion or fear, there can be awe, connection, or a sense of seeing old problems in a new light. Researchers are exploring these states not just for curiosity, but because such deep shifts sometimes help people step out of long-standing patterns of depression, anxiety, or addiction. Underneath the visions lies a simple message: your sense of self, usually so solid, is something the brain constructs, and what the brain builds, it can also loosen and rebuild. There are everyday hints of this too. In synesthesia, the senses cross their wires in unusual ways. A person might hear a sound and see a burst of color with it. Numbers might feel like they each have their own flavor. Words might come with textures, shapes, or tastes. The world for them is layered, every note or letter carrying extra sensations. Neuroscientists think that in synesthesia, neighboring brain regions, like those for sound and color, have extra connections or less strict boundaries. When one area activates, the activity spills over into the other. It's rare, but it gives a vivid glimpse of how perception is built. Our senses are not fixed boxes. They are patterns of connections. Change the wiring, and the same world looks and feels completely different. The brain's flexibility shows up most strikingly when a sense is lost. If someone is blind, the visual cortex does not just sit silent. It can be recruited to help process touch or sound. Reading Braille, for example, can activate the seeing areas, which have been repurposed to work with fingers instead of eyes. In people who are deaf, regions usually devoted to hearing can become more responsive to vision, helping with motion detection or visual attention. The brain does not like empty real estate. It reallocates it, sending new kinds of information into old spaces. That is one reason many blind people notice sharper hearing or touch, and many deaf individuals show enhanced visual awareness. The brain is not rigidly wired, it is opportunistic, using whatever input it can get. Sometimes, though, the brain's internal map is slow to update. When a limb is lost, many amputees still feel it. They might sense itching, tingling, or pain in a hand or foot that is no longer there. This phantom limb lives in the brain's representation of the body, a map spread across the sensory cortex. The space on that map that used to belong to the missing limb doesn't just disappear. Neighboring regions can start to invade it. Touching the face of an amputee can sometimes trigger feeling in the phantom hand, because on the cortical map, the face and hand areas lie side by side. The body you feel is not just your physical form, it is a model the brain maintains. That model can lag behind changes, holding on to parts of you that no longer exist. The fact that the brain runs on electrical patterns means those patterns can be read and to some extent written. In neuroprosthetics, tiny electrodes are placed in the motor cortex, the region that plans movement. When a person simply imagines moving a hand, specific patterns of activity appear. By recording and decoding those patterns, a computer can send matching signals to a robotic arm. The result is that a person who is paralyzed can think reach, and a mechanical limb moves. In some cases, devices bypass damaged spinal cords and stimulate muscles directly, allowing real arms or legs to move again. It is thought turned into motion, a mind reaching beyond its injured pathways. Brain-computer interfaces take this idea further. Electrodes on the surface of the scalp or implanted inside can pick up neural signals linked to intention, wanting to move a cursor, select a letter, or even form speech silently. Algorithms learn to translate those signals into commands. A computer understands more die answers brain. Algorithms learn to translate those signals into commands. People who cannot speak or move can use such systems to type messages, steer a wheelchair, or control a robotic device. The interaction is still slow and clumsy compared to natural movement, but the direction is clear. Thought is being linked more and more directly to machines, hinting at a future where hands and voices are not the only ways to communicate. If we can read patterns, can we also write them? In animals, scientists have begun to do exactly that. By stimulating specific sets of neurons in the hippocampus, while pairing them with certain situations, researchers have created artificial memories in mice. Later, the animals behave as if they had lived through events that never actually happened, avoiding places linked to a fake shock or seeking out spots tied to a fake reward. The memory in their brains is real enough to guide behavior, even if the experience never occurred. This suggests that memories are not fixed files, but patterns that can be created, reshaped, and even forged when the right cells are activated in the right way. Even feelings can be switched on by direct currents. During some brain surgeries, patients are kept awake while surgeons apply tiny electrical pulses to different regions to map function. In certain areas, a small zap can trigger sudden laughter, even when nothing is funny. In others, it can bring on a wave of sadness, fear, or calm. The person feels the emotion as genuine, even though it was evoked by a few microamps of current. This doesn't make emotions fake. It shows that joy and grief, awe and dread, all ride on specific networks that can be nudged. The most private parts of experience have roots in circuits. Deep brain stimulation uses that fact to treat illness. In this therapy, electrodes are implanted permanently into targeted regions. A small device under the skin sends regular pulses of electricity into the brain. It was first developed for Parkinson's disease, where it can quiet tremors and stiffness that medicine alone cannot control. People who could barely move can sometimes stand, walk, or hold a cup steadily again. More recently, similar approaches have been tried for severe depression that resists all other treatments. By adjusting activity in mood-related circuits, some patients find their emotional life slowly brightening after years of darkness. All of these threads, natural DMT, psychedelics, synesthesia, sensory remapping, phantom limbs, thought-controlled machines, artificial memories, and electrical stimulation, point to the same strange truth. The mind you live inside is tied to patterns of activity and living tissue. Change the patterns, and the world you experience, the body you feel, even the you at the center, can shift in ways that are subtle, dramatic, or almost unbelievable. Some diseases do not just touch the brain, they slowly take it apart. Alzheimer's is one of them. It often begins in quiet ways. A name slips away. A story is repeated. Keys are forgotten in strange places. At first it feels like ordinary aging. But underneath, the networks that hold memory are starting to fray. In Alzheimer's, abnormal proteins build up between and inside neurons. Outside the cells, sticky clumps called plaques get in the way of signals. Inside the cells, twisted strands called tangles choke the machinery that keeps them alive. Bit by bit, neurons stop talking to each other. Then they die. The hippocampus, that small seahorse-shaped region that helps form new memories, shrinks. New experiences no longer settle in properly. Later, damage spreads. Language, reasoning, and recognition begin to fail. It is not just being forgetful. It is the physical unraveling of brain tissue. Families often describe it as watching a person fade in front of them. The body remains, but pieces of the inner world fall away. Safe routines, shared jokes, favorite stories, all begin to slip. And yet, even in later stages, the self is not completely gone. A familiar song can light up the eyes. A well-known voice can bring a moment of clarity. A gentle touch can stir an old smile. These brief sparks show that fragments of identity still live deep in the remaining circuits, even when words and dates are no longer in reach. For a long time, people thought adults could not grow new neurons at all. The story was simple. You are born with all the brain cells you will ever have, and from then on, it's a slow loss. That turned out to be wrong. In certain regions, including the hippocampus, new neurons are born even in adulthood. This process is called neurogenesis. These newborn cells don't just sit around. They slowly plug into existing networks and begin to help with learning and memory. Their numbers can be nudged. Physical exercise, rich and stimulating surroundings, and even regular meditation seem to boost the birth and survival of these neurons. Chronic stress and aging can reduce it. The amounts are small, but the message is big. The adult brain is not a sealed sculpture. It is more like a garden. Most of the trees are already grown, but new shoots still appear, and old branches can still be trimmed and reshaped. Some of the strongest proof that memory is tied to specific pathways comes from the nose. Smell and memory are deeply linked. The region that processes scent, the olfactory bulb, sends signals directly to the hippocampus and the amygdala, the emotional center. It skips a relay step that most other senses use. That shortcut may be why a single whiff of something familiar can yank you back through decades in an instant. The smell of fresh bread might throw you into a childhood kitchen. Pine needles might transport you to winter holidays. A certain perfume might bring back a person so vividly you can almost hear their voice. Writers have described this effect for a long time. A simple taste or smell unlocking a flood of detailed memories. Scent-triggered memories often feel more emotional and immersive than others, because the pathways for smell are wired straight into the circuits that store feeling and story. It is as if tiny invisible keys drift through the air, waiting to unlock doors you forgot were there. Holding a memory for the long term is not just about neurons firing. It requires physical work at the microscopic level. When a new memory is being made stable, certain genes inside neurons switch on. They tell the cell to build new proteins. Those proteins then strengthen synapses, the contact points between cells. They help make those connections more solid and more likely to fire together again. If protein building is blocked at the right time, new memories can fade within hours instead of lasting. This is why repetition helps. Each time you revisit a memory, by recalling it, practicing it, or talking about it, the relevant circuits activate again. That reactivation kicks off another round of protein building. Connections grow a little stronger. The story of your life is not only written in patterns of electricity, it is also etched into the structure of proteins and membranes, woven into the physical fabric of your brain. Emotion acts like glue in this process. Think about the memories that stand out most clearly. They are often tied to strong feelings: joy, fear, grief, awe. During intense moments, the amygdala talks closely with the hippocampus. Stress hormones and other chemicals surge, telling the brain, "This matters. Remember this." Details around those events, where you were, what you heard, the light in the room, often stick more firmly. This is why you may recall exactly where you were during a major shock, but not what you did one ordinary afternoon last month. Emotion makes memory powerful. It also makes it heavy. Traumatic events can be etched so deeply that they intrude again and again. As in post-traumatic stress, the brain has marked them as crucial to survival. and keeps bringing them back, even when they hurt. So emotion doesn't just store events, it turns them into stories with weight, shaping how you see yourself and the world. Forgetting, on the other hand, can feel like failure. A name vanishes, a fact you once knew slips out of reach. It is easy to think of this as the brain simply decaying, but forgetting is also an active, useful process. The brain constantly clears and rearranges its storage. Synapses that are rarely used are weakened or dismantled. Tiny immune cells called microglia may help prune away unused connections, freeing space and resources. Without forgetting, memory would clog. Every detail would compete for attention. People who can remember almost every day of their lives often describe it as exhausting. The endless flood of detail can crowd out the present. Forgetting allows flexibility. It lets the brain focus on what matters now. To forget is not always to lose. It is also to make room. Memory also turns out to be easier to bend than we might like to think. With careful suggestion, people can come to remember entire events that never happened. If a researcher repeatedly hints that you took a balloon ride as a child, and maybe shows you a doctored photo, your brain can begin to assemble a story around that idea. Later you may recall that memory with confidence, including details that were never mentioned. Brain scans show that false memories can activate many of the same circuits as true ones. They feel real from the inside. This fragility is why eyewitness accounts, though vivid, can be unreliable. Memory is not a camera, it is a reconstruction. Each time you recall something, you rebuild it, and in doing so you leave it open to small edits, from your current mood, from what others say, from what you now believe. The past is not fixed in your head. It is a story, rewritten each time it is told. Sometimes we lean into that, and the result is nostalgia. When you hear an old song, visit a childhood place, or look through old photos, you may feel a warm ache. It is sadness and comfort at the same time. Nostalgia lights up reward circuits in the brain, releasing dopamine while also activating memory and emotion regions. It is the brain's way of wrapping the past in a soft glow. In stressful times, nostalgia can help steady you. It reminds you of continuity, of who you have been across the years. It is not just longing for what is lost, it is also reassurance that your story has roots. This mix of comfort and sorrow can ease loneliness and lift mood. Beneath the sentiment is a real biological response, using memory as medicine. Memory is not only individual, groups remember too. Shared events, wars, migrations, celebrations, disasters become part of a collective story. When people recall these events together, the brain networks for memory and for social connection work side by side. Monuments, holidays, and rituals act like external hard drives, helping societies store and reload important memories. Just as neurons link up to form a brain, people link up through shared stories to form cultures. Collective memory gives a sense of we, stretching across generations. It shapes identity, values, and even ideas of right and wrong. In that sense, memory exists at many levels. It is the story of a single self, but also the story of a people. Some individuals push memory far beyond everyday use. Memory champions who can recite thousands of digits or entire decks of cards rely on an old trick called the memory palace. They pick a familiar place, a house from childhood, a route through a city, a favorite building. Then they place the items they want to remember along a mental path through that space. A number might sit on a windowsill, a name might hang from a doorknob. A sequence of cards might be turned into vivid images and scattered along a hallway. When they want to recall the information, they simply walk through the palace in their mind. Neuroscience shows that this method taps into the brain's powerful spatial memory system, which evolved to help us navigate physical spaces. Brain scans of memory champions reveal strong activity in regions linked to place and movement. Not just verbal memory, they are turning facts into a journey and data into scenery. It is a reminder that memory is not just storage. It is imagination in motion, using the brain's love of maps and stories to hold on to what might otherwise slip away. If you could hold your brain in your hands, it would feel firm, almost solid. But most of it is water. Roughly 3/4 of that tissue is liquid. That water cushions fragile neurons, keeps chemicals at the right levels, and lets electrical signals travel smoothly. It fills the clear fluid that surrounds the brain and spinal cord, helping absorb shocks and carry away waste. Because of that, even mild dehydration shows up quickly in the mind, a bit too little water, and reaction times slow. Thoughts feel heavier. You might get a headache or struggle to focus. It's a reminder that this complicated electrical organ depends on something simple and ancient: water. Every thought you have is supported by it. Each memory rides on tiny currents. Thinking is, in a small way, a form of flowing. Dreaming is drifting on the quiet tides inside your skull. Alongside water, there is another element at work: electricity. Neurons communicate with tiny sparks, and when billions of them are active together, the total power is surprisingly large. At any moment, your brain is generating about 20 watts of electrical energy, roughly enough to light a small bulb. It isn't stored the way a battery stores charge. It's constantly being used and renewed in the endless dance of signals. Still, the image holds. Each idea, each flicker of awareness, is powered by a real current bright enough, in theory, to glow. Your brain is both organ and lantern, shining a light you can't see but that illuminates your inner world. The same basic physical force that makes a lamp glow is what stitches your sense of reality together. One spark at a time, those sparks move with astonishing speed. When one neuron fires, the signal crosses the tiny gap to the next cell in a few thousandths of a second. Chains of such cells can pass information so rapidly that you can snatch at a falling glass almost before you've had time to realize it's slipping. Reflexes are routed through the spinal cord to cut down delay even further, pulling your hand away from something sharp or hot almost automatically. This is why your experience of the world feels smooth, not jerky or delayed. Electrical pulses and chemical messages leap across billions of junctions at high speed, so quickly that individual sparks blur together into a steady stream. What feels like continuous, effortless awareness is actually a storm of millisecond events, flicking so fast they merge into one. For all that sensitivity, the brain itself has a curious blind spot. It cannot feel pain. The neurons in your cortex and deeper regions don't have pain receptors. That's why surgeons can operate on the brain of an awake person, and the tissue doesn't register discomfort. The pain of a headache comes instead from nearby structures, the protective membranes, blood vessels, muscles of the scalp and neck. This oddly numb quality is useful. It lets doctors stimulate different regions during surgery while patients talk and move, helping map which areas control which functions. It also means that tumors or other issues inside the brain can grow unnoticed until they press on surrounding tissues. Pain is one of the brain's creations, but the organ that generates the feeling lies outside its reach. It's a reminder that pain belongs to perception more than to any single patch of flesh. To protect such a delicate structure, the body wraps the brain's blood vessels in a special defense system called the blood-brain barrier. Cells lining these vessels are packed tightly together, forming a wall that lets in only select substances. Oxygen, glucose, and a few other small or fat-soluble molecules can pass through fairly easily, feeding the brain's constant hunger. Many toxins, bacteria, and even helpful drugs are blocked. When something does manage to slip past and infect the brain, the consequences are often severe, which shows how important that barrier is. At the same time, its vigilance makes treating brain diseases tricky, because medicines that work well elsewhere in the body may never reach their target here. Researchers are exploring clever ways to sneak treatments across this guarded border without damaging it. The blood-brain barrier is like a silent gatekeeper, deciding moment by moment what is allowed to enter the sanctuary of thought. Meanwhile, everyday substances can influence brain chemistry using much simpler tricks. Take caffeine. As you stay awake, your brain produces a molecule called adenosine. It slowly builds up and binds to receptors, telling neurons to ease back and making you feel sleepy. Caffeine looks enough like adenosine that it can slip into those same receptors, but it doesn't trigger the slow down message. It just blocks the spot. For a while, your brain can't properly read how tired it is. You feel more alert, more focused, as if you've been given extra energy, but the adenosine is still building up, waiting. When the caffeine wears off, all that pent-up sleep pressure hits at once. That's the crash. Caffeine doesn't create energy. It rents wakefulness from later. Temporarily masking fatigue in a chemical negotiation many people repeat every day. Beneath these broad effects, a few key chemicals quietly shape your motivation and mood. Dopamine is often nicknamed the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite right. Its main job is motivation and learning. Dopamine is released in anticipation of something rewarding, a good meal, a goal reached, a message from someone you care about. It gives you a small push to act, to seek, to keep going. When you do something that leads to a reward, dopamine helps mark that action as important. The brain takes note. This path led somewhere good. Over time, this system teaches you what to repeat, what to chase, and what to avoid. Drugs and certain behaviors can hijack this circuit by causing huge dopamine surges, teaching the brain to crave them again and again, even when they're harmful. More than simple pleasure, dopamine is the fuel for striving, the spark behind effort and desire. Serotonin plays a different role. It doesn't shout, "Go get this," the way dopamine does. Instead, it acts more like a conductor, keeping various systems in tune. It helps regulate mood, lending a sense of steady well-being when things are balanced. It influences sleep cycles and appetite. Interestingly, most of the body's serotonin is made in the gut, and signals travel back and forth between there and the brain. Low serotonin levels have been linked to depression in some people, which is why many antidepressant medications aim to increase its availability. But it isn't a simple happiness switch. It's more like a stabilizer, helping emotions, sleep, and bodily rhythms stay aligned. Serotonin is part of the quiet background hum that keeps the mind's music from drifting too far off key. Then there is oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone. It's released during childbirth and breastfeeding, helping bond parent and child. It also rises during hugs, shared laughter, and physical affection. When oxytocin levels go up, people tend to feel more trusting and connected. They may be more generous and more willing to cooperate, but oxytocin isn't all softness. It can also strengthen feelings of us versus them, deepening loyalty to one's own group. At its heart, though, it is a chemical that glues relationships together, turning brief touches and shared moments into longer-lasting bonds. Every warm embrace carries a silent wave of oxytocin, reinforcing the ties between you and the people you care about. Endorphins are another part of the brain's internal pharmacy. They are the body's own versions of morphine, binding to the same receptors to reduce pain and create a gentle sense of euphoria. They surge during long runs, intense exercise, laughter, singing, and sometimes even while eating very spicy food. They likely evolved to help humans push through hard moments. A hunt, a long escape, childbirth, injury. The runner's high, many people describe. That floaty, peaceful feeling after sustained effort is largely endorphins at work, combined with other chemical changes. Unlike drugs from outside, endorphins are released in just the right doses for the situation, tuned by your own physiology. In every fit of giggles, every long hike where the discomfort suddenly eases, your brain is quietly adjusting the dials, soothing pain and sprinkling in a bit of joy to help you keep going and to draw you closer to others. Teenage brains often look reckless from the outside, but on the inside they're tuned for something very specific: exploration. During adolescence, the brain's reward circuits become extra sensitive to dopamine. New experiences, social approval, and risks all light those pathways up more brightly than they do in most adults. At the same time, the front of the brain, the part that calmly thinks ahead and weighs consequences, is still under construction. That mismatch, the gas pedal pressed down while the brakes are still being installed, creates a mind drawn toward novelty and bold choices. This can lead to impulsive decisions and risky behavior, but it also powers courage, creativity, and rapid learning. Taking chances helps teenagers step out of childhood roles and test who they might become. The same wiring that drives late-night adventures and wild ideas also helps them form deep friendships, try new skills, and imagine futures adults might not dare to consider. The teenage brain isn't broken. It's designed for transition, for leaping from the safe shore of childhood into the unknown waters of adulthood. Before that stage, in early childhood, the brain is even more intense in its own way. It is as if every neuron is reaching out, saying, "Connect with me." Millions of new synapses form every second. By about age 2, a child's brain has roughly twice as many connections as an adult's. It's a deliberate overgrowth, a wide-open net designed to catch every sound, word, face, and pattern in the world around them. This explosion of wiring lets children soak up language, rhythm, and culture with astonishing ease. But the brain doesn't keep every connection. Over time, it trims or prunes the ones that aren't used much and strengthens the ones that are. Childhood is a time of abundance, followed by careful editing. The brain throws every door open, then slowly closes the ones that lead nowhere, and widens the doors that matter. That's why early experiences have such lasting power. They're not just passing moments, they help decide which circuits stay and which fade. The way a child is treated weaves directly into this architecture. Warm, responsive care, being held, soothed, spoken to, fills the growing brain with signals of safety. Circuits for trust, resilience, and curiosity are reinforced. On the other hand, chronic stress or neglect can wire in heightened alarm. Pathways linked to fear and vigilance can grow stronger, while those needed for learning and calm may lag behind. During the first years of life, plasticity is at its peak, so the environment leaves deep impressions. Each hug, each gentle word, each playful interaction is not just comforting in the moment. It becomes part of the brain's structure, shaping how that mind will respond to the world for years to come. Language shows this timing clearly. Children seem to pick up new tongues almost without trying. Before puberty, the networks that handle sound, meaning, and grammar are highly flexible. They can easily form new patterns, and multiple languages can slide into place, side by side. After adolescence, those circuits are more specialized. Learning a new language is still very possible, but it usually takes more effort, more practice, and often leaves a hint of accent behind. Young children raised in bilingual homes can switch between languages with fluid, native ease. Adults learning later in life often rely on different strategies, memorizing rules, drilling vocabulary, practicing deliberately. It's harder work, but not hopeless. The desire to communicate and understand doesn't vanish with age, it just follows a different path, carved more slowly, but still deep. Using more than one language regularly doesn't just expand conversation, it seems to give the brain extra resilience. People who are bilingual and switch between languages often are constantly exercising attention and control. Choosing the right word in the right language, suppressing the other one, juggling two systems at once. This mental juggling strengthens executive functions, the skills that help you stay flexible, shift focus, and manage competing demands. Over a lifetime, that workout builds what scientists call cognitive reserve, a kind of hidden backup strength in the brain's networks. Studies suggest that bilingual individuals, on average, may show symptoms of dementia later than people who speak only one language, even when the underlying brain changes are similar. It's as if having more routes available lets the mind reroute around damage for a little longer. Simply moving between two vocabularies and grammars becomes lifelong training for the brain. Music reshapes the brain in its own broad way. Learning to play an instrument isn't just about moving fingers. It requires reading symbols, translating them into timed movements, listening closely to pitch and rhythm, and adjusting based on feedback. Musicians often show stronger connections in auditory regions and finer timing in the circuits that handle sound. Their brains get better at telling tiny differences in pitch and at tracking subtle patterns in time. Even a few years of music lessons in childhood can sharpen attention and language skills. The bridge between the two hemispheres, the corpus callosum, can grow stronger as it coordinates both hands and both sides of the body. Practicing an instrument exercises motor areas, hearing areas, visual pathways, and memory all at once. Each practice session is quiet, rewiring, turning repeated notes into new networks that help the brain listen more keenly and adapt more easily. Reading is another skill that the brain didn't originally evolve for, yet it bends itself around it. Writing and print are relatively recent inventions, but when you learn to read, your visual system starts to treat certain shapes. Letters and words are special. Regions that once just recognized general shapes and objects become tuned to these specific patterns. Over time, a patch of visual cortex becomes a quick detector of written words, allowing you to recognize them almost instantly. Reading also links vision to language and memory. When you silently read a sentence, brain areas for hearing may activate as if you were listening to a voice in your head. Meaning is pulled in from language circuits, while memory helps you tie new information to what you already know. Each book you read doesn't just change your thoughts. It leaves traces in the wiring that supports those thoughts. Even video games, often blamed for distraction, can train certain abilities. Games that require moving through complex spaces, tracking many things at once, or reacting quickly to visual cues can improve spatial awareness and hand-eye coordination. Gamers often show stronger connections in regions that handle attention and visual processing. They may be better at following multiple moving objects, switching between tasks, and staying focused in noisy environments. Some games even challenge the hippocampus by asking players to remember and navigate large virtual worlds, boosting the brain's internal maps. Of course, too much gaming can crowd out other important activities, but in moderation, interactive digital worlds demonstrate once again how experience sculpts the brain. The circuits don't care whether a landscape is physical or virtual. They adapt to any environment you keep exploring. Stress runs through all of this as both a tool and a hazard. A short burst of stress before a test, during a competition, when something unexpected happens, can sharpen attention and response. It floods the brain with chemicals that heighten focus and energy. But when stress becomes a constant background hum, the same chemicals begin to wear down the very circuits that need to stay healthy. The hippocampus is particularly vulnerable. Prolonged exposure to high levels of cortisol can shrink its connections, making it harder to form new memories and easier to feel mentally foggy. That's why people under ongoing pressure often forget things or struggle to learn. Yet, the brain can recover. When stress is reduced and rest, exercise or calming practices return, the hippocampus can regrow connections. The damage is real, but not fixed. Like a landscape after a storm, the brain can slowly green again. Exercise is one of the simplest ways to help that healing along. Moving your body increases blood flow to the brain, delivering more oxygen and nutrients. It also stimulates the release of growth factors that encourage the birth and survival of new neurons in the hippocampus. These fresh cells support learning, memory, and resilience against decline. At the same time, exercise adjusts the levels of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, lifting mood and easing anxiety. You don't need extreme workouts to see benefits. Even regular walking can brighten thinking and emotional balance. Every step, every faster heartbeat sends signals upward that say, "We're active, we're engaged. Keep the system strong." The body and mind are in constant conversation, and movement is one of the clearest ways the body speaks health to the brain. Meditation sits at the other end of the activity spectrum but reshapes the brain too. Long-term practice has been linked to thicker or more connected regions in areas that handle attention, learning, and emotional regulation. The hippocampus can grow stronger. The amygdala, the hub of fear and stress, can become less reactive. Even a few weeks of consistent practice can bring measurable changes, improving focus and calming reactivity. In mindfulness practice, you keep bringing your attention back to the present, often to the breath or simple sensations. Each time your mind wanders and you gently return it, you are training circuits for awareness and control. Over time, these repeated returns carve new pathways of calm. The prefrontal cortex, which helps with planning and self-control, can become thicker and better connected. Mindfulness, then, is not just a mood, it's a physical training. Each small moment of noticing and letting go strengthens the fabric of awareness, giving the mind a steadier grip and a softer touch as life keeps moving around it. Your brain can change its own state just by what it expects. That's what the placebo effect really is. When someone takes a pill they believe will help, even if it has no active drug inside, the brain often behaves as though treatment has begun. It can release its own painkillers, endorphins, easing discomfort. Regions involved in emotion and expectation shift their activity. Mood can brighten. Anxiety can soften. In some illnesses, like Parkinson's, even movement can temporarily improve as dopamine levels rise. None of this is just in your head, in the dismissive sense. It is in your head, in the literal sense. Belief and hope, triggering real chemical changes. The mind signals that relief is coming, and the body mobilizes resources to match. It shows how perception and expectation can reach down into biology, nudging cells and circuits. In that way, the mind is not only the patient waiting to be healed, it is also part of the healer, blurring the border between thought and body. Hypnosis is another example of how attention can reshape reality from the inside. For a long time, it was wrapped in mystery and stage tricks, but brain scans paint a clearer picture. Under hypnosis, regions involved in self-reflection and wandering thought quiet down. Areas tied to focus and imagination become more tightly linked. The result is a mind that is intensely absorbed, open to suggestion, and less busy with constant self-commentary. In that state, a suggestion can feel vivid and real. Pain can be dialed down. Anxiety can ease. Memories can be revisited and sometimes felt in a new way. Rather than losing control, a hypnotized person is usually in a state of narrowed, sharpened control, with attention turned inward and deeply engaged. The brain's circuits for imagery and focus intertwine so strongly that an idea can become an experience. Hypnosis shows how flexible reality can feel when attention is guided carefully. Psychedelic substances change that inner landscape in a different, more dramatic way. Drugs like psilocybin and LSD don't just add colors and patterns to perception. They reorganize how brain regions talk to each other. One of their main effects is to quiet the default mode network, the system that normally keeps track of your story, your identity, your inner monologue. When that system settles down, other regions that usually stay separate begin to connect more freely. The result is a burst of unusual associations, intense imagery, and often a sense that the usual me has softened or dissolved. People describe feeling merged with nature, with other people, or with something vast beyond themselves. From the outside, it looks like a disruption. From the inside, it can feel like a revelation. Scientists are studying these states because when handled carefully, such deep shifts in perspective can sometimes loosen rigid patterns of thought and emotion that underlie certain mental illnesses. For a short time, the brain becomes less bound by its ordinary wiring, and consciousness turns into a swirling kaleidoscope of possibilities. Beneath all these altered states lies a larger mystery. Why any of this feels like something from the inside. One idea about consciousness is that it doesn't live in a single special spot, but in the way information is combined across the whole brain. According to this view, many different regions handle sight, sound, touch, memory, and emotion. But consciousness is what it is like when those pieces are woven together into a unified whole. If information stayed fragmented, visual here, sound there, memory somewhere else, you would have many disconnected glimpses. Instead, you experience a single smooth stream, seeing, hearing, feeling, and thinking as one. The theory suggests that this integrated pattern, this binding of diversity into unity, is what gives rise to conscious experience. The brain becomes a chorus where many voices sing at once, but you hear them as one song. Even your sense of choosing, your feeling of free will, may be layered in a similar way. Experiments have shown that the brain can begin preparing a simple action, a flick of the wrist, a button press, before you feel the conscious urge to do it. Patterns of activity can sometimes predict what choice you'll make a moment before you decide. That has led some to argue that unconscious processes start the process, and conscious awareness comes in later. Others point out that awareness still seems able to influence and veto actions once they rise into view. You might feel an impulse and then choose not to follow it. In that light, free will may not be an all-or-nothing command system. It may be more like a negotiation between deep, automatic preparations and the slower, reflective layer that can approve, redirect, or stop them. Your choices are not born in a single instant. They emerge from many levels, with consciousness as the final editor of a draft written in the background. All the while, the brain is changing. Neurons form and break connections. Cells die and are replaced. Signals shift. Over months and years, the physical matter inside your skull is not exactly the same. Yet you feel like the same person. The continuity comes from memory and story. The brain keeps reconstructing an ongoing narrative, who you are, what you've done, what you value, and it does so with enough consistency that it feels like a solid core. In reality, the self is less a fixed object and more an ongoing process. It is being woven, unraveled, and rewoven moment by moment from activity patterns that are always in flux. The illusion of a stable I is one of the brain's most impressive tricks and also one of its most useful. It anchors experience so that life does not feel like a series of disconnected flashes, but like one continuous journey. When we build artificial intelligence, we borrow some of these ideas. Modern AI systems called neural networks are loosely inspired by the way neurons work. They are made of units that pass signals to one another and adjust their connections based on feedback. Over time, they learn to recognize faces, translate languages, or generate images by strengthening the paths that lead to correct answers and weakening others. But even the largest of these nets are simple compared to a human brain, with its roughly 86 billion neurons and trillions of synapses. AI shows that complex behavior and pattern recognition can emerge from networks, not from a single controlling point. In that sense, our machines are small mirrors of us. By trying to imitate the brain's architecture, we discover both how powerful networks can be and how much more intricate the living version remains. Intelligence, whether in carbon or code, seems to grow from connections, from many tiny parts, intacking at the deeper mystery of how matter, arranged just so, becomes mind. Inside your skull sits a structure more intricate than anything we've ever found in the sky. Around 86 billion neurons, each reaching out to thousands of others, form a tangle of connections so dense it makes star fields look simple. Trillions of synapses flash with tiny sparks, weaving together sight and sound, memory and language, habits and hopes, and that quiet inner voice that calls itself I. No galaxy cluster, no swirling nebula we've ever observed matches this level of organized detail. The human brain is the universe's most complicated known arrangement of matter, and somehow, from that arrangement, awareness appears. Within those folded sheets of tissue lies the ability to imagine whole galaxies, write music, invent tools, and wonder how the brain itself. The brain is both the object being studied and the thing doing the studying, both the question and the instrument that looks for answers. A cosmos of cells that not only responds to the world, but knows that it exists in that world. The fact that such vastness fits into a few pounds of warm living tissue is one of the strangest, most beautiful facts science has uncovered. All the things you've heard about, the forests of neurons and rivers of memory, the shifting patterns of sleep and dreams, the way belief can nudge chemistry, the way experience rewires circuits, are happening quietly in that small space behind your eyes. Every song you've ever loved is encoded there as patterns of activity and strengthened connections. Every face you've ever known, every place you've stood, every private hope and fear has left traces in that network. The same organ that can map the universe also lets you feel at home in a single familiar room. Looked at one way, the brain is ordinary biology. Water, fat, salt, and protein organized by genes and experience. Looked at another way, it is miraculous. A piece of the universe that turned complex enough to look back at the universe and ask why. To study it is to realize that turning inward can be as vast as looking up at the night sky. Somewhere in that quiet electrical storm, the story of your life is being written and rewritten moment by moment in tiny sparks of light.